Babe of the day. Babe of the day. Yvonne Craig. She was a familiar face in the 1960s, but Batgirl will always be her signature role. This is not a bad thing to be remembered for. Yvonne was certainly one of the highlights of the Batman TV series. She was extremely feminine and looked good in her tight purple costume. Batgirl was also a positive character. I hate saying things like a good role model for girls, because I think she was a good role model for anyone. As far as the Batman TV series goes, I'm not a great fan. There were some cool things about it, but I never thought it was a good interpretation. The women were hot, and the Batmobile was cool, but Batman was never meant to be that corny. I would watch the Batgirl parts. I don't think I'm the only one. If Yvonne would have had things her way, she may have become a world-famous ballerina. At 17 years of age, in 1954, she became a professional ballerina and stayed one for 3 years. This training is something that would ultimately be useful when she played Batgirl years later. Things didn't work out with her company, though, and she left in 1957. She wanted to continue her career as a dancer, but kept getting acting roles. As early as 1958, Yvonne started appearing on television and in big shows like Perry Mason. Interesting enough, in her Perry Mason episode, Neil Hamilton played her stepfather. Almost a decade later, Neil Hamilton played Commissioner Gordon on the Batman series, who was also Batgirl's father. She couldn't escape that guy. In 1959, she started getting film roles. They weren't always big parts, but she got visibility, and it helped her throughout the 60s. Her highest profile roles, before Batgirl, were probably her 2 Elvis films. It Happened at the World's Fair in 1963, and Kissin' Cousins in 1964. But she had a lot of credits, and was great in all of them. Check them out! In 1967, Yvonne Craig landed her most famous role of Batgirl on the Batman TV series. Ironically, though, she wasn't a girl anymore at 30 years of age. She still looked younger because she was pretty and petite, but girl wasn't exactly accurate. A lot of people don't realize that Batgirl was originally intended to have her own series. A pilot was made and can still be found and watched. The idea was to feature Batgirl in her own show as a lead, with occasional characters from the Batman series popping in. Batgirl herself would show up in the Batman series from time to time. They were going to make a regular habit of crossovers. The plan fell through, though, and Batgirl just became a regular character in the Batman series. It would have been interesting to see Batgirl in her own series back then. Would it stay as corny as the Batman show? Or would it have taken on its own straightforward identity? If the Batgirl series wasn't a carbon copy of Batman, it could have worked. Batgirl only appeared in the 3rd and final season of Batman for just 26 episodes. However, Batgirl became very iconic and is still fondly remembered by fans of the show. Batgirl was brought into the show at the same time she was brought into the comic books. DC Comics had an earlier but different character of Batgirl that did not take years earlier. They didn't just retool the Batgirl character, they came out with an entirely new character and just called her Batgirl. Batgirl on TV may have been short-lived, but her comic book counterpart became the most successful version of Batgirl in comic book history. I do think that Yvonne's portrayal of Batgirl helped the popularity of the character in comics. DC has occasionally tried to come out with new Batgirl characters, but it always goes back to the Yvonne Craig, Barbara Gordon version of Batgirl. Yvonne reprised the character of Batgirl in a 1974 public service announcement about equal pay for women. She would have been 36 or 37 at the time she filmed it, and still looked like she did on the series. It was as if time hadn't stopped, and the world changed quite a bit from 1968 to 74. Her acting career largely ended in the early 1980s, but she did take on some roles, even voice acting, on rare occasions. And she was rarely out of the public spotlight. Yvonne liked the Batgirl character, and you would see her on different talk shows and things that celebrated the Batman show. With her great looks and ladylike demeanor, Yvonne Craig always was and always will be Babe of the Day, Babe of the Day. Because you can't get enough of a good thing, here is Yvonne Craig, Part 2. I want to thank everyone who has watched, liked, commented, and even subscribed to One Step Past because of my earlier Yvonne Craig video. It's good to know that this iconic actress still leaves such a positive impression on the world today. Because of that, I wanted to share some more pictures of Yvonne I thought you would like to see. This picture shows Batgirl's original mask design from her pilot film in 1967. I'm glad they changed it. This particular design doesn't flatter her. It hides too much of her face, for one thing, and it kind of makes her face look droopy. You can see how Batgirl's real mask highlights her cheekbones and just makes the character look better. The funny thing is that, if Batgirl was a real person, she would probably want to have the mask that so incredibly alters her appearance. However, when you're creating a character for entertainment, you've got to make her look good. In the comic book superhero world, function always loses to fashion. When I made my previous video of Yvonne Craig, I realized one thing. I didn't have one picture of Batgirl's high kicks. This was one of my favorite things about her portrayal of Batgirl, and I didn't have it in there. What's wrong with me? Well, when I make my Babe of the Day videos, I'm very selective about the pictures that go in there. To a degree, I have to make the photos fit the narrative. I also had to include other photos of Yvonne because she didn't just play Batgirl. So I didn't do it then, but I'm making up for it now. Here's a high-kicking photo of Yvonne as herself. You can see how her past career as a ballerina really helped her out when she was doing this on TV. Here are some rare pictures of Yvonne from a film called One Spy Too Many in 1966. This is actually one of the times when they made feature films out of TV episodes from The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Instead of being an original movie, it was really the two-part premiere of Season 2. Yvonne was not actually in the TV episodes, but she was in this movie. How does that make sense? Well, when it was decided to make the Man from U.N.C.L.E. episodes into movies, they decided to add extra footage of sex and violence that they could never do on TV back then. In One Spy Too Many, Yvonne's scenes were added to create a subplot. She was an uncle operative carrying on a flirtatious relationship with Napoleon Solo. It was totally gratuitous, but who cares? Here are some more great swimsuit pics of Yvonne that I thought you would like. I really like this one where she's standing in the tide. It's a once-in-a-lifetime shot that, thankfully, someone was able to capture on film. And, just for fun, this one. This next one comes from the Batman series. I know they had to make it more reserved because Batman was sort of a kid's show, but dang, it's still sexy. If you put Yvonne Craig in any kind of a swimsuit, you're just not going to hide everything. This bright yellow bikini pic comes from the Elvis movie Kissin' Cousins. I like this movie anyway. It's funny and enjoyable. Yvonne was one of the bright spots. She plays a totally unrefined hillbilly girl, but still manages to be sexy in a bikini. How did she pull it off? You tell me. A lot of people like the Batgirl scenes when she's in some kind of peril, and so do I. You'll notice in the show that while bad guys are actively trying to hit Batman and Robin, they're usually just trying to grab Batgirl and restrain her. Then they put her in some kind of a trap that the dynamic duo can easily get her out of. I don't think any of the bad guys really wanted to kill Batgirl. They just wanted to see her wiggle around and squirm a bit. I always liked the fact that when Batgirl was caught, she was still defiant. She was never like, "Poor me, what am I going to do?" Instead, she was like, "I've got to get out of this mess," and "Your evil scheme is never going to work." Sometimes she got herself out of trouble. Other times, Batman and Robin had to save her. Over the years, action heroines have become more brutal. It's true that Yvonne Craig's Batgirl is not Xena Warrior Princess or Alice from the Resident Evil movies, but I don't think she is any less strong-willed. One of my favorite scenes of Batgirl Peril is when she's tied up with the cat's whiskers. For some reason, she has to roll around a lot and wiggle quite a bit before she frees herself. Not that anyone is complaining. The most objectionable thing that ever happened to Batgirl, physically, is when she was sprayed with some kind of knockout gas. This was done a number of times in the series. Even Batman knocked her out with sleep spray. Another one of Yvonne's iconic roles was Marta, a green-skinned Orion slave girl in an episode of Star Trek called Whom Gods Destroy. This came after Batgirl, and even though it was a one-shot appearance, it's still one of the best remembered supporting characters of the original Star Trek series. Yvonne loved the character and the barely there dress, but admitted it was a grueling shoot. It took her 6 days to film her part, and she wore a green body makeup that was very hard to keep on. The makeup would come off if someone touched her, or sometimes just on its own. Then they would have to stop filming and green her up again. A lot of Batgirl fans love the Batgirl cycle. In my first video for Yvonne, I didn't have any pictures of her on the bike. Why? At the time, I wanted to get as many close-ups of Yvonne in the video as possible. I would have liked one in there, but didn't think it fit. However, a big part of the character's appeal is her awesome bike, so I decided to show it off here. In the original pilot pitch for Batgirl, before she was made a regular in the Batman series, her costume and her motorcycle looked different. One of my viewers commented that her original bike looked like it came from a junkyard. It's true that this original version of the Batgirl cycle just didn't get it. A superhero has to have a super bike, right? This was corrected by Batman Season 3, and the Batgirl cycle now looked worthy of the character. Unlike the Batmobile, of which 5 were made for the series, there was only one Batgirl cycle made. It was a customized Yamaha, although the model has been speculated upon. The one that was sent for the Batgirl pilot was a YCS1. It's unclear if the same bike was used for the Batman series, as it was changed so much. A lot of people think the bike in the series was a Yamaha YDS 5E. When the show ended in 1968, Batgirl Cycle went back to Yamaha so they could use it for car shows, comic book conventions, anywhere they wanted to show it off for publicity. It's strange, then, that nobody seems to know where this bike is today. Since it's a part of TV history, it should be preserved and celebrated. Here are some more photos of Yvonne just being herself. I really like this one, because it's rare to see her with a ponytail, and the look works for her. I also like her red, kimono-looking outfit. Here's another picture of Yvonne with long hair, showing off her bendiness. Okay, any woman who sits in a chair like this commands my attention. Just to prove that she's still hot in winter, here are some more cool photos. I've got to say, she's showing real bravery, sitting on an ice block in bikini, eating an ice cream cone. Better her than me. Here she is holding a little snowman. Do you think he'll melt? And here are some more pictures of Batgirl, just because I feel like it. There isn't too much to say about these, other than the fact that they're just awesome. Yvonne was born to be photographed. Hello, Batgirl. Here's Robin copying a field while rescuing her. Yeah, I'm sure that needed to be done. Wink, wink. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed part 2 as much as part 1. It's been great to make yet another tribute video to an actress I've enjoyed since childhood. For you and for me, Yvonne Craig will always be a babe of the day, babe of the day. Yvonne Craig, Part 3. This was a long time coming, but when it comes to Yvonne Craig, you can't get enough of a good thing. I still had some pictures of her in my collection that I hadn't shown you in the previous 2 videos. I hope you enjoy them. I thought I'd get the ball rolling by showing you more pictures of Yvonne as Batgirl, because, hey, that's what everyone wants to see, am I right? was a one-time thing, nobody gets enough of Yvonne as Marta, the green-skinned Orion slave girl from Star Trek. She was not the first green girl in Star Trek. That distinction goes to Susan Oliver. Both are pretty iconic. There are few certainties in life, but one thing will always remain true. Yvonne Craig looks great in a bikini. Here are some various shots of Yvonne in swimwear. And back to Batman. Here are a few photos of Yvonne as Batgirl in her original appearance. Notice the different looking mask. I think they made the smart choice in changing it. And here are a few photos from the Batman set. bikinis and skin-tight outfits are alright, but can she pull off wearing a dress with success? The answer is yes. And here are some more photos of Yvonne Craig, just looking good. I wanted to finish this video off by showing a few pictures of Yvonne in her later years. As you can see, she was still just as pretty as she ever was. Young or old, she had beauty, a sparkling personality, and an appreciation of the characters that endeared her to so many people, making her a true babe of the day, babe of the day.